All right, it's Tanya Summary Shiur time. It is week 46, Kanai and we're doing chapters 23 and 24. Really, there's a little bit off the top of 23 that we did last week, but we're probably just going to end up doing it again just because it's so relevant to the entire chapter. And I dare say I think that this week is actually going to be very short. It was a very short Tanya Machlal, which was almost a little bit welcome with all of the other things going on. It was Sukkot and Simchas Torah, so a very hectic week in general. So a rather short Tanya, probably intentionally so. And yeah, without any further ado, let's just jump right into it. So chapter 23, we mentioned last week, essentially, that it says that whenever there are 10 people that they sit and they study, the Shekhinah dwells by them. And it also says in the Mishnah that one person that sits and studies Torah, that there is reward that's given to him. So the question that Alter Rebbe asks is, what's really this difference between saying that the Shekhinah dwells there versus saying that there's a reward that's given? So the Alter Rebbe explains by saying that really all good that we experience is a result of appreciation of divinity. That everything good ultimately comes from Hashem. So when we appreciate something good, it's all an appreciation of Hashem in a very direct way. Sometimes there's a concealment of godliness, and that could cause a negative feeling or something like that. Really, everything is all from Hashem, including the bad. But what something being bad means is that it's something that we can't appreciate it. And that's what makes it feel bad. We're not appreciating the good, so the absence of good feels like bad. However, good things are an appreciation of divinity. So, the Alter Rebbe says that reward, whether it's in this world or in the next world, is a personal relation to Hashem. Which is to say, the soul personally feels close to Hashem. Now, this could happen in this world via physical goodness, which, again, even physicality comes from Hashem. It could also be in the world to come. It could be a reward that the soul will delight in its closeness to Hashem. Whatever the case is, that is all reward. However, the dwelling of the Shekhinah is something that it's a revelation of godliness that's so intense that it can't be internalized in a person. It's like if you love someone very much, you could love them, but you can only love them from a distance. That is to say, you can't be them. You can't be necessarily one with them in a complete and perfect unity. It's a little bit of a complicated thing to say, but when we have a reward from Hashem, what it is that we're appreciating Hashem within ourselves. We're appreciating with our souls just the fact that we are actually united with Hashem. This divine dwelling, the dwelling of the Shekhinah, is something which is loftier than that. It's something, it's so all-encompassing for the world, for the universe, that no individual can say that they're appreciating God via this. It's something that happens to the world, but it's so intense that no individual can say that they relate to it on a personal, individual level the way that they can when they receive reward. The Alter Rebbe says this is the meaning of the Talmudic statement, that it says that the reward for mitzvahs in this world doesn't exist. The Alter Rebbe says this is because of the nature of what the ultimate reward of doing a mitzvah is. Because the ultimate reward of doing a mitzvah is to bring down godliness in such a way that it's so intense that no individual can say they relate to it. It really does elevate the world. It changes our entire perception of existence, ultimately, when Mashiach comes, but we can't appreciate that as an individual. We can only appreciate that in a very general, encompassing way. Just to give a little bit more of like an example, even a very grubba, a very unrefined example, but just to give something more tangible for what I'm talking about. There are two kinds of pleasure or enjoyment that a person can have. They can eat something geschmack, they can eat something tasty, and they'll enjoy it, it'll be in them, and it's a very personal relationship that they have with the food. Or they can have a good friendship. A good friendship is not, oh yeah, I have that friendship, and then suddenly, like, I'm not hungry anymore. I don't even know what to say about it. There's no way of saying of a personal relation to friendship. Friendship is, it's personal in the sense that I'm a person and I relate to it. But it's not something that happens to me, like my physicality, my being, my corpse. That word doesn't really translate into English that well, but in Yiddish it makes sense, trust me. But the point is that it's more external, it's more encompassing. I can't say that when I'm friends with someone, that they make me feel good in the way that if I would eat them, then I would feel good. I can't eat them. I can't relate to them in that way. What I appreciate about them is the love and the friendship, which is encompassing, and I can't appreciate that internally. That's just how it is. It's hard to try to explain the absence of being able to appreciate something. But yeah, that's the gist of it in a very... And the way that would relate is that reward is more analogous to eating food, that you eat it and it's tasty in your mouth and it feels good in your stomach. Whereas the Hashav, the Shekhinah's dwelling in the world, is more analogous to a friendship. The Alter Rebbe says that we as people, are able to appreciate the dwelling of the Shekhinah, but it's actually so intense that Malachim are not able to handle it. The Alter Rebbe says he has a tradition from his teachers, that an angel cannot withstand the dwelling of the Shekhinah in the world. And just going back to what we said at the beginning of the chapter, the dwelling of the Shekhinah happens whenever you have 10 Jews that are gathered. Now, the context over there is that it's talking about when 10 Jews gather and they study Torah. But it also says that when 10 Jews gather, even if they're eating a meal, that there's a dwelling of the Shekhinah in the world. There's just a divine presence whenever there are 10 Jews that are gathered. And that's really what the Alter was trying to build up to this point, because he's about to make a petition, slightly dissimilar to a lot of the petitions he's made until this point in this section of Tanya were for tzedakah. But this petition is for something slightly different. He is asking that between Mincha and Ma'ariv, when there's a minyan of Jews, that they shouldn't talk about random things. They should try to study Midrash. They should try to, not Midrash, it's not the right word, they should try to study Agadah. Essentially stories from the Talmud and interpretations of verses from the Talmud. And he says this part of Torah really contains all of the deepest secrets. They're enclosed in parables and whatnot, but ultimately they contain the deepest secrets. And he says that it's really important because when there are 10 Jews gathered, the Shekhinah is pasha there. Hashem is in the room with you to the extent that Malachim can't handle that divine revelation. And it's almost like a chutzpah. It's almost an audacity to be sitting there with Hashem and to not be studying Torah. So he says, you're anyways gathered between Mincha and Ma'ariv. Don't talk about random things. Try to involve the Shekhinah in the conversation. Try to appreciate Hashem when you're gathered with 10 Jews anyway between Mincha and Ma'ariv. So that's his petition. That's what he's asking for. And it's really like a beautiful thing. Yeah, 10 Jews come together, study a little bit of Torah. It's nothing like it. Anyhow, that is chapter 23 of part 4 of Tanya. And now we move on to chapter 24. And chapter 24 is very interesting. I'd say there's a lot to be said about it, but try to keep it short-ish. Essentially, the Alter Rebbe is petitioning to not talk in the middle of davening. So, the Alter Rebbe essentially says that when Jews are gathered to daven, the congregation is speaking to Hashem. Now, a person might not appreciate that, because we're all physical. And ultimately, sometimes it's hard to appreciate that we're talking to Hashem, the King of all kings, can't fit into the room. So it's difficult sometimes to fathom that. The Alter Rebbe says, essentially, at least pretend. If you taka can't see it, if you taka can't experience it, at least pretend. Because when you're imagining that Hashem is taka, listening to everyone in the room, which that's what the religion does believe, that when we talk to Hashem, Hashem is taka, paying attention, Hashem is listening. And you have a guy, or a girl, or whoever it is, and they're not paying attention, and they're just talking about their own conversation. It's a chutzpah. So even though it's hard to appreciate that necessarily, because it's hard to, we don't see Hashem standing in front of us in a physical sense. But ultimately, a person shouldn't have that chutzpah to show that they taka don't care. A person should at least pretend. That's essentially what the Alter Rebbe says. So the Alter Rebbe says, based on the principles that the Chachamim of the Mishnah, the Talmud, established about how serious it is, he says that he's making a ban against anyone who does talk from when the Chazan starts the tefillah until after Kaddish Basra, the last Kaddish. We'll get back to that in a minute, but not there. But he says that he's establishing a ban against them, but that if anyone decides that they feel bad, they regret their behavior, they can sit on the ground and ask for forgiveness from a quorum of 3 men, and thereby it'll be that retroactively the ban never took place, because if they regret it, then the ban wasn't meant for them. It's only for people that don't regret it. But ultimately, the point is that we're all supposed to regret it, and we're all supposed to not talk in the middle of davening. So there's a lot of good diyokim to be had in this parak. I don't know, not too many, but at least some good ones. But this is a summary share. Something briefly to touch upon is that for many years, I'm not entirely sure what's the full period that he's referring to. If I had to say from a halachic perspective, it would make the most sense to say that he's referring to from the beginning of Shemoneh Esrei until after the Kaddish that's known as Kaddish Tiskabel. In halachic literature, that Kaddish is also known as Kaddish Basra, which means the last Kaddish, even though there are other Kaddishim that are recited after that, but those are all from custom. That being said, it could be argued that Kaddish Basra means literally the last Kaddish that is said in the congregation, and really it is a good idea to not talk, because if a person is talking before the last Kaddish, it's possible they'll be caught up in a conversation during the Kaddish, and it's brought in Shulchan Aruch that it's a very serious thing to be talking in the middle of Kaddish. It's definitely not allowed. So, at least as a safeguard, it's a good idea to not talk at any point before the last Kaddish. And from the beginning of davening, what does that mean? That could also mean from when the Chazan stands by the Amud and says Heidu. It's possible. It's also possible that it means from Yishtabach. I can't say that I know. Ultimately, though, the point is that we should have an appreciation of wherever it is that a person is holding in davening. It's the fact that you're standing with the congregation, and the congregation is trying to speak to Hashem. A person should be mindful, and a person should try to fit into the vibe. A person should try to appreciate the fact that they're standing before Hashem. That is the ikr, that is the main thing, and we should all show respect for Hashem. And even if a person taka doesn't see it, it's still a very big mitzvah to imagine that you're standing before Hashem. That's one of the main things of davening. So that's the Tanya for this week, and the Tanya for this coming week is a very fascinating Tanya that I think about probably at least on a weekly basis. A very powerful chapter about whatever. We'll get to it when we get to it. A little bit of a cliffhanger. All the best, and looking forward to it.